What's going on, everybody? Sean with LUMIX Live here, and back at you with another recorded stream this week while we are taking a little bit of a break right before we're going to be all out at CES this year. Like we did last week, we talked primarily more about the photography side of features and, just some different things like working with the files in, RAW with Adobe Camera Raw or some of those other programs. I wanted to kind of balance that out a bit and talk about some of the video functionality that we've talked about throughout the year, but just provide a little bit of a refresher and some of the cool things that I think, after looking at all the feedback from, all of you across the board, may have gotten a little overlooked over the last year. And to do this, I'm going to be using my GH6 here, and I actually have attached to it one of the anamorphic lenses on here so that we can kind of, use that as a platform to discuss some of the things I want to talk about. So we're going to take a look at the image coming from the camera. We'll talk about some of the different functionality that I want to go over, and then we'll regroup back here and just got a couple closing thoughts. And yeah, so let's get into it. So, as you can see here, I've got my GH6 hooked up, and like we said, I have the 50mm Sirui anamorphic lens attached on this camera. So this is a 133x de-squeezed anamorphic lens, and now that anamorphic lenses are becoming very affordable for the vast majority of users, not like it used to be when we kind of really first started talking about anamorphic functionality with our cameras, it's now gotten to the point where there are a lot of people that want to work with this and be able to use some of the different functionality in the camera, but may need a bit of a starter on, where certain things are, how do you activate certain things, what are the limitations with the different tools that we have in the camera for working with anamorphic lenses in particular. And while the 133 that I have attached right now is maybe not the most aggressive looking for anamorphic, so this isn't going to be that ultra, kind of iconic look of an anamorphic setup, it still gets the point across as to where you can find these different features in the camera and what you should look for when you want to work with an anamorphic lens. So to start with, I've got, the reason I have this on my GH6 is that, well, for a couple of things. One, I can shoot open gate 5.8K in this camera. And what that means is that I'm using the full 4:3 aspect ratio of the sensor. So as you can see, looking at the image down there, you'll see that right now I'm outputting over HDMI into my ATEM, which means that one, I'm downscaling the image in a 1920 by 1080 output. So that's why you get the black bars on both sides. But two, you see that aspect ratio in that 4:3 is really gonna kind of give you the maximum that you can get out of the actual image area that you want to record with. So we have a couple of different options in the cameras. You've got a 5.8K, you have a 4.4K, a 3.3K, depending on the cameras that you look at. All of these different options are there to either assist in things like faster frame rates or to give you different regions of the sensor to work with. As a bit of a light kind of coverage on anamorphic lenses, you have multiple different squeeze ratios with them. You have everything from like a 1.3, a 1.33, all the way up to a 2x. And what this means is that it's how de-squeezed you're going to have to make your footage, or what the lens is designed for, to get you that aspect ratio and to have things look correct when you're working with them. So this anamorphic lens I have attached on here from Sirui, it's a 50mm and it's a 133, so it's a 1.33x de-squeeze. So what we've built into a number of the cameras for you is the ability to come in here and apply a de-squeeze effect to that particular lens, so that you can know basically what your footage is going to look like. So when I come in here, you'll see that you've got things from off, 1.3, 1.33, 1.5, 1.8, and 2. So because, like I said, this is a 1.33 lens, you want to come in here and set this to 1.33. Now, here comes the first little bit of a challenge, I'd say, for some, depending on what you're using the system for, right? So when you are outputting over HDMI, you will not get the de-squeezed image out of the camera. The de-squeeze is designed for the on-camera displays. So in this case 133, it's de-squeezing on my LCD on the camera and in the viewfinder, but over HDMI, it's still going to maintain that squeezed 4:3 aspect ratio image. So keep that in mind when you're working with this. There are ways that you can present the de-squeezed out, and by doing that, basically you would be sending this into a recorder and then using the recorder to de-squeeze that footage and send a de-squeezed image out. So if you are going to want to do that, if you want to have like an external monitor that's showing a de-squeezed preview, that's where you're going to, you're not going to use the in-camera de-squeeze unless, you're looking at the frame on the screen as well of the camera. But you would have an external monitor attached that is doing the de-squeeze to show you as a preview, and then sending that footage out as a preview from that monitor. So that's one way that you can do that. And Matt and I did a stream on this at this point years ago, where I went through the process of hooking up a Shogun to my box camera at the time with this lens on it and showing you what that de-squeeze looks like in the different perspectives. So you can definitely take a look back at our archives and see some of those videos. But so that's one. You've got some tools in here to be able to do this in a very kind of minimal run and gun style. But if you know that you want to have a bigger display, or you want something to output that de-squeezed functionality to a bigger monitor for, say, like a reference monitor for a client, you're going to want to put in any kind of HDMI monitor in between these two. Now, when it comes to those monitors, the Atomos monitors have 133 as a de-squeeze. I have to double check, but I'm fairly certain the Blackmagic Video Assist monitors do not have a 133 de-squeeze. I know that they have a 2X and a 1.8, but 1.3 might not be one, or 133 might not be one that's on there. So just look at the monitor that you're going to work with, and it'll tell you whether or not it'll have a 133X de-squeeze if you're using this lens. If you're not using these lenses, just make sure that that monitor has a de-squeeze function for the lens that you're putting onto the camera. And like I said, there are various different ones out there. Just look at the lens, the manufacturer. It's going to tell you what the de-squeeze ratio is. So outside of that, that's really kind of the big one when it comes to the anamorphic part. The other part of this is going to really kind of come into whether or not you're going to be moving with the lens. So if you're going to be on a tripod, that's one thing. But if you're going to be hand-holding anamorphic footage and you want to go, kind of run and gun style, because these lenses are really small and kind of portable, you're going to want to make sure that you also tune your stabilization properly. So like most setups, there are stabilization capabilities that we have built into our cameras. And with all of this stuff, you've got to take into account, one, the field of view of the lens that you're working with, but also when it comes to anamorphic, you have to take into account that you're actually going to be increasing a rolling shutter or a jello effect when you're doing anamorphic footage, because you'll be de-squeezing it, and in many cases you're going to be recording from the whole sensor height and width. It actually accentuates any kind of instance of rolling shutter or jello as you're moving. So what we've done in the cameras is we've actually built in a system here for the image stabilization that allows you to come in and say anamorphic stabilizer for video, which de-squeeze option am I working with? So in this case, because again, this is a 133X lens, I want to come in here and I want to select this to say, I want 133X stabilization. So when I come in here, I turn that on. This now tells the system that it needs to be aware that it's not looking at a standard spherical image. It's now looking at an image that is being squeezed in, and then for the purpose of de-squeezing it out later. So make sure, if you're going to be hand-holding this camera, if you know you're going to be doing some run and gun work, make sure that you also don't forget to set up your stabilization properly. As I said, we've got a number of options there. If I go back in the menu, you can see them again here. Each of the more popular de-squeeze functions, so 2, 1.8, 1.5, 133, and 130. There are some others out there. Of course, there may be one or two that are just not included in here, but that's usually because those are lenses that still aren't commonly available or aren't really in the realm of like what would be considered affordable to use. So All the major popular ones are in here, and for the most part, you probably will be able to find any lens that you're working with. It's a modern lens. You won't have a problem getting the stabilization effect proper on this. So 2 of the main things when it comes to working with anamorphic: make sure you check the stabilization, and then also make sure you understand about the de-squeeze functionality and how it works, that it's only for internal, and it's not de-squeezing your footage. Your footage still comes out as the 4:3 aspect ratio, or whatever you've got the camera set up to. You then have to go into software and do your de-squeeze for your final production. And on that point, there's actually a really good video that Photo Joseph just put out that we'll link down in the description below, that talks about de-squeeze and the anamorphic functionality of the GH6, but really in an open gate sense. So I'll link that down in the description. After this video, definitely go take a look at Joseph's work. He's got some really cool details for you if you're really looking for the resolution measurements and things like that. So outside of anamorphic shooting with the camera, we've added a number of other things here. So if I come in here and I change this back to some of my more default settings, some of the functionality, and I've gotten this question a lot actually recently, is, well, you know, I want to be able to do long form recording, but I don't want the camera to just have one singular file. For those that don't know, depending on the media that you're using in a camera, you have different maximum file sizes that you can work with. And in the GH6, which is the camera we're using for this demonstration, you have 3 different types of media, right? You have SSDs, CF Express, and SD cards. Well, CF Express and SSDs, they're going to give you typically the maximum amount of recordable time. Since those are formatted in EXFAT or exFAT, those files can be up to 96 gigabits per file. So that means if you're doing an entire run on a 1 terabyte SSD on this camera, you're going to get 96 gigabyte files across the board. So if you've got, say, 7 hours worth of footage that you want to record on it, you're going to have a bunch of 96 or 97 gigabyte files for it. There are other ways to go larger on that file, and it all depends on how your SSD is formatted. But if you format it in exFAT, you're going to typically get 96 gig. The CF Express is going to function the same way. You're going to have 96 gigabyte files for every individual clip that is run. Even if you run it longer than that 96, it's just going to start a new file and move forward. SD cards, so standard SD media, is where a lot of the confusion comes in. So depending on the card that you use, if you're someone that's still using an SDHC card, so the older style SD cards that were fast for a while and then now XC came out, basically what you're going to end up running into is you have 2 options there. Most of the time those cards will be formatted as FAT32 if it's an HC card. And what can happen there is that when you put it into the camera, you'll see that, 1, you're going to be limited to 4 gigabyte files. So instead of 96 gigabyte, it'll keep making new files no matter what at 4 gigabyte. The challenge there is that SDHC cards are really kind of size limited. Usually you're only getting, at least last I checked, you can typically only find those up to maybe about 16 gigs. Maybe you find them in 32. But you're just not really, they're just not really the primary card anymore. SDXC is the card that now we're primarily using because that's what's giving us the largest, kind of speed benefit, as well as giving you the overall, size benefit for the memory that's on that card. So, but what happens there is when you use those, because those are formatted as exFAT as well, you're going to go back to that kind of 96 gigabyte file size, which means if you are someone who would much rather have the safety of having multiple files being written in sequence in smaller bytes, so in the case that, say, you've got your camera powered through wall voltage and someone kicks the power out and you don't have any backup solution for your power, there are instances where you could corrupt that video file. It doesn't write the ending of the file anymore, so then you potentially could lose that one solitary clip. So we've added in here, is a long way to get to it, we've added in the functionality here on the others video page under the video functionality on the GH6, and we do this on a number of other cameras as well, the ability to do segmented file recording. So now what we've done, and this is where it's different on the GH6 compared to the others, is we've now added the ability that, again, when you're using an SDXC card, so something that is using the 96 gigabit or exFAT formatted, I can come in here and say that I want video segments of my uninterrupted clip to be saved out every 1, 3, 5, or 10 minutes. So think of this as like that extra backup level of, if you're fine being able to take all the clips, you drop them into Premiere or Final Cut or Resolve or whatever program you work with, you'll be able to take those files, put them in, and they'll be perfectly fine together. They're sequence numbered, so it's going to go all the way up through the range, and they'll function as one individual video. But you have that function now to say, like, hey, I might be in an environment where I don't have uninterrupted power, or I may be having to attach to wall voltage, and I can't control that it's always going to be uninterrupted. This allows you to just have that safety net of, I only want 10-minute video clips, so that if something ever were to happen, I only ever lose 10 minutes of footage. This can also be really good at situations where, if you know that you're going to have the camera set up just for a very long-term recording, and it's more of like, say, a surveillance style setup, where you're just going to have the camera run, let it run all day, and you know that there may be a couple of things that you need to access. This is where you can go through, and then as you play through the video files, you don't have to take an entire 96 gig file. You can then just take a 10-minute, a 3-minute, 5-minute, or 1-minute file, and know that, okay, hey, that piece of content that I want is in that one 5-minute or 10-minute file. I only need to pull that to work with it, and there you go. So it can save you some time in post if you know what you're looking for in the footage and how you want to have it run. So yeah, definitely take a look at segmented recording. It's a cool little feature that's built into the cameras. We've had it for a while, but we've kind of evolved it a little bit with cameras like the GH6. So let me turn that back off. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about here is loop recording. So loop recording, this is another one of those things where if you're someone who likes to have the camera set and run, think of it more as like the dash cam mentality, right? I want to have the camera set, run, and I only want it to ever, kind of save the footage when I stop the recording. Well, what loop recording allows you to do is just let the camera run. It'll fill up whatever media cards you've got in there, but it'll overwrite the previous files that are written on it. So loop recording allows you to indefinitely let the camera run and record and just keep going and going and going, and kind of, like I said, act more like a security camera or some sort of like IP surveillance type camera, so that it can just keep running. You don't need to go to like the largest card, but say you're trying to capture just one specific thing. You're able to then have it record, overwrite previous footage, and then when you do see the instance of something like, oh, hey, like this happened between this time and this time, I know I need to save that, you just click the record button, it stops, it saves that file out, and now you've got that footage saved. So think of this as a long-running buffer. It'll only ever save the footage that is recorded there when you click the shutter button again or the video record button again, and save that out as a file. So aside from that, we've talked about a lot of the other functionality in this camera, so the tools that we offer. We've got everything, like we said, from anamorphic D-squeeze to vector scopes and waveform monitors to that IS status scope. So for those that may have not ever worked with IS status scope, this is what allows you to plug the kind of like stabilization matrix over the display, so you're able to go in and say like, hey, how stable am I actually on my footage? So we have that functionality built in here. We have the different LUT functions for view assist. So in our setup, we've got LUT select, which allows you to come in here, and when you're in a actual vlog color profile, I can come in, go to LUT select, and then I can select what LUT I actually want to have displayed over my footage. But then I can also go in and say, if I reprogram this button to do view assist, I can now have that turn the LUT on over that footage. Obviously, the one that I selected is not necessarily the right one for what I'm looking at, but I can come in here and then just kind of pick which ones work for my particular workflow. So if I come in here and do the standard 709, I get my 709 look over my log. This is now just outputting over HDMI. I can also come in and say, you know, I want this on the monitor. So now if I do it, it's changing it on the monitor. You have a lot of that kind of flexibility when it comes to the video side. You also have the dual zebras. So we've talked about Zebra 1 and Zebra 2. This is what's nice to be able to let you go in there and say, like, I want zebras for my highlights, and then I want zebras for my midtones, and they'll come across as different directioned cross-hatching. So you can program them in, pick what range you want them to be in, and then just customize them to your particular taste. So lots of tools in the camera. I encourage you to play around with these. Again, like I said, I'm using a GH6, so this is going to have some of the different features that you may see in other cameras, but some that you may not see. And ultimately, you know, whether or not you're someone who's going to be working with, you know, the video functionality on the camera, or if you're someone who's primarily more stills oriented with the LUMIX cameras, we've always taken this process that we're building hybrid cameras. We're building cameras that if you're a photographer, if you're a videographer, or if you're, you know, someone who is dabbling a bit in the other area of where maybe it's not your expertise, we've got systems built into these cameras that will allow you to kind of play around a bit. Now, you've got all the way up to cameras like the GH6, you've got the S5 in full frame, you've got the S1 series, you got the S1H all the way up there. We've got levels for everybody across the board, even down into a G100. If you've never checked out a G100 and you just want to play around with maybe a little bit of video footage and you want just a good pocket camera, you've got a really good solution there. But the main through line with everything is that cameras are tools. These are devices designed to be able to help you get your creative side out, whether or not it's for pay, if you're a working professional, or if you're someone who's just, you know, casually doing this for fun. Take a look at the systems. Know that no matter what system you go with within the LUMIX series, you're not really giving anything up between them. It's just a matter of how much of a specialized tool do you want in each of those categories. The S5 is definitely like I'd say probably greatest of that hybrid platform for someone that wants to get into this. You want to get a camera that's got a full frame, you want really good stills functionality, good low light performance, you want really good video functions, and if you needed it, you've got RAW over HDMI for that camera, but you don't need necessarily all of the top level features like open gate. You don't need unlimited recording. We have cameras that fit that bill. The GH6 for some people, don't shy away. If you think that, you know, you really want to go down that path, yeah, definitely check out a GH6. It's got all of the top line video features that you can think of, but it's still a really solid, competent stills camera. An S5 platform, you want to get into full frame, you want to get into it cost effective, you got a solid solution there. But all the tools that we put in these cameras, the D-squeeze functionality, the anamorphic stabilization, the LUT previews, the waveform, vector scopes, all that kind of stuff, we're now basically at a point where those are always being included in the platform, so it doesn't matter which system you go with. It all just depends on what level of video functionality or photo functionality you want mixed and how balanced you want those systems to be. Like I said, the S5 platform tends to be the very, you know, kind of balanced system when it comes to looking at our line of cameras. The S5, super balanced. The S1 was a bit heavier balanced towards video shooters, and then over time it kind of came back a little bit closer, but it still is a little bit more balanced in towards video. When you go up to an S1H, you're way leaning into the video side of it. For still shooters, it actually made some different, you know, kind of trade-offs for still shooters. Like, for one, it has an optical low-pass filter, which typically in still side, we're not as looking forward to. There are certain circumstances that's not to minimize situations where a low-pass filter does actually come in handy for a still shooter, but the whole point of an optical low-pass filter tends to be a much stronger tool for video shooters. But then you go down to, GH5 Mark II, the G9, the GH6. These are cameras that within the Micro Four Thirds realm do, kind of echo the same thing. The G9 is like the solid hybrid camera user. You've got high burst rates for stills, you've got 4K 60p, but it's got some time limits to it. The GH5 Mark II is just the updated version of our classic. It gives you the newer processing, newer algorithms, all that kind of stuff, newer hardware, but you still get the kind of core benefits that a GH5 offered, which was a really solid balance that did lean a bit heavier towards the video functions. And then we've got our top tier boy, the GH6 here, giving you the top of video functionality. So I know that shifted more into kind of like about the camera side of it, but yeah, with a lot of these streams throughout the year, we've tried to keep as much on topic as we can, and through all the conversations that everyone's had through the chats, through the comments, you've all made these streams probably some of the most fun that I have working with the community and working with our equipment. So, with that, I want to thank everybody for such an awesome year this year. This is going out on the 29th of 2022 in December, so this will be the last stream for 2022. It's been a lot of fun. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming over the next couple of weeks and throughout 2023. So I definitely want to kind of really expand this platform, get more people involved with it. I think everyone's going to have a really fun time interacting with the channel. So if you don't already and you feel like we've deserved it, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. If you liked these videos or you like the content you got on this one, give us a thumbs up. That always helps with us, getting these videos out to more and more people. But yeah, outside of that, we will be live during CES. So we've got a number of streams that are being ready to go. I'm still working on some of the last little details of them, so the schedule should be going up hopefully next week. At the beginning of the week, we'll have that schedule posted. So you're definitely going to want to get subscribed to the channel. You're going to want to make sure you turn the bell icon on, all that kind of fun stuff. This way you know when those videos go up. CES is next week from January 5th through the 8th, I believe. So definitely watch the LUMIX USA or LUMIX Cameras channel. So this LUMIX USA platform. Make sure you're keeping up to date on our social media channels. CES is a fun show. This is the first year that we're actually back in person. We were supposed to be there last year, but then last minute situations with the pandemic kept us from being able to go. So Matt and I are super excited to actually be working together in one place, finally, after such a long time. So be sure to join us there. If you're going to be out in Las Vegas and you're going to be attending CES, swing by the booth. Matt and I would love to meet up and chat with you while we're at the show. And then what else? After CES, we will be back to our normal Thursday at 2 p.m. schedule. So be sure to take a look at all that stuff. And yeah. With that, though, thank you all so much for such an awesome year. Thank you for all the support that all of you have provided over the year, the words of encouragement, the comments that you give us, the fact that you all are still joining us and having these conversations with me. This is, again, like I said, it's truly one of the most fun and exciting things I do with the company, and I'm excited that the community has a voice within our company. That is the purpose of this. It's to give all of you a voice to the teams within Panasonic that make decisions, that, help drive the future of our products moving forward. So keep the comments coming. If you've got questions or topics that you want us to cover in the future, make sure to leave them as a comment after the video. We do review them. They are, kind of watched for language. That's why it's delayed to get your comments posted. But yeah, leave us your comments. Again, if you like the video, I've said it a couple of times. If you like the video, if you like the channel, and you think we've earned it, give us a like, subscribe, the bell icon, all that kind of fun stuff. But other than that, I hope everyone has a great new year. Hope everyone has a safe new year. And I look forward to coming back to you next week from CES out in Las Vegas. So, yep, take care, everybody. Have a good new year.